Rachel Johnson stood quietly at the doorway, her breath turning into little clouds in the winter air. The house before her glowed with warm golden lights, Christmas decorations sparkling in every window. Laughter spilled out from inside, mixed with the faint sound of carols. For a moment, she almost felt like a child again coming home. But deep down, she knew things had changed since her father passed away. She took a deep breath, pushed the door open and stepped inside. The heat from the fireplace wrapped around her like a blanket, and the smell of roasted turkey made her stomach twist. She had skipped dinner just to make it here in time. In her hand, she held a small gift bag, filled with carefully chosen presents. She had worked double shifts for months at the diner to buy them, wrapping each one with care, hoping her effort would bring a smile to her relatives' faces. Rachel, her aunt's sharp voice cut through the noise. Well, look who decided to show up. Her cousins turned their heads, eyes sweeping over her plain coat and worn boots. A few of them smirked. One whispered something that made the others laugh. Rachel forced a smile and stepped closer, setting the gift bag under the tree. I brought a little something for everyone, she said softly. Her youngest cousin pulled out one of the gifts, turning it over in his hand before letting out a laugh. Is this really it? Cheap perfume? Socks. The room filled with chuckles. Her aunt shook her head, her gold earrings swaying as she spoke. You should have kept your money, Rachel. We know times are hard for you and your mother. These tokens aren't necessary. Rachel felt her cheeks burn, but she tried to stay calm. I thought of everyone. That's all that matters, isn't it? Her aunt leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. What matters is knowing your place. You don't need to prove anything to us. We can take care of ourselves. The laughter continued, cruel and cutting. Rachel's eyes flickered to the mantel where a photo of her late father still stood. She straightened her back, her voice trembling but firm. My father loved this family. He would be ashamed to hear how you're speaking to me. The room went silent for a moment. Then her uncle, tall and cold, rose from his chair. His gaze was sharp, his tone sharper. Don't you dare bring your father into this. Things are different now. This isn't your home anymore. Leave before you embarrass us further. Rachel froze, the words slicing through her like ice. What? You're throwing me out? On Christmas? Her uncle didn't blink. You heard me. Leave. Her cousins exchanged smirks, some whispering as she slowly turned to the door. She bent down, picked up the small gift bag she had brought, and clutched it to her chest. The warmth of the room, the glow of the tree, the sound of laughter. It all seemed to vanish as she stepped back into the cold night. Snowflakes fell gently around her, settling on her hair and coat as she walked down the porch steps. Her body trembled, not just from the winter chill, but from the sting of rejection. Tears filled her eyes, blurring the bright lights behind her. She had come hoping to belong, hoping to be welcomed, but instead, she was cast out like a stranger. On the empty street, Rachel hugged the bag of gifts tighter, her breath shaky and uneven. The snow kept falling, soft and quiet, as if the world itself was mourning with her. On Christmas night, when families should come together, she was left alone in the dark. It was once filled with love, now poisoned by greed. Rachel grew up in that big family house, where her father's laughter echoed through the halls, and every holiday was a celebration of togetherness. Back then, it didn't matter who had more money or who dressed better. There was love, food on the table, and warm hugs that made the world feel safe. But after her father died, everything changed. The same relatives who once embraced her began to see her differently. The warmth was gone, replaced by whispers, cold stares, and quiet greed. Her father's side of the family, who had once praised him for his success, wasted no time taking control of everything he had worked for. The estate, the savings, the family house. Piece by piece, they claimed it all. Rachel and her mother were left with nothing. They were told, politely but firmly, that there was no place for them in the new order. Soon, they found themselves moving out, carrying what little they could into a small rented apartment across town. Rachel watched her mother struggle, selling her jewelry just to cover rent, stretching meals so they would last through the week. It hurt Rachel deeply, but instead of giving up, she decided she would fight in her own quiet way. She picked up 2 jobs, one as a waitress in a diner and another part-time in a bookstore. Her days were long, her feet often sore, but she never complained. Every tip she earned, every dollar she saved, became a step toward something better. At night, After long shifts, Rachel would return to their cramped apartment and sit at the kitchen table with her law books spread out in front of her. She was studying real estate law, a subject that might have seemed dull to others, but to her it was a key that could one day unlock the door her relatives had slammed in her face. She dreamed not of revenge but of stability, of one day being able to give her mother the peace she deserved. Meanwhile, her relatives flaunted their wealth at every opportunity. They drove new cars, posted pictures of expensive vacations, and wore clothes that cost more than Rachel earned in a month. They treated her with pity, as if she were a child to be looked down on. To them, Rachel was the poor one, a girl who would never rise above her place. Sometimes, they even acted as if her father's death had erased her right to belong to the family at all. But Rachel carried something they didn't know, a memory of her father's voice. He had once told her, "Never let anyone take your dignity, even if they take everything else." Those words became her anchor. Whenever the weight of exhaustion pressed down on her, whenever the cruel laughter of her cousins echoed in her mind, she reminded herself of that promise. She would not lose her dignity. She wasn't chasing wealth or revenge. What she wanted was respect, security, and the chance to live a life that would make her father proud. She wanted to stand on her own 2 feet without anyone sneering at her. But no matter how hard she worked, she remained invisible to those who believed money was the only measure of worth. To them, Rachel was pitiful. To herself, she was simply not there yet. But she would get there. Her mother often worried that Rachel was working too hard, burning herself out before she could enjoy her youth. But Rachel would smile gently and say, "It's not forever, Mom. One day things will change." She believed it with all her heart. Each sleepless night, each sacrifice, was a stone laid on the path toward that change. Rachel didn't hate her relatives, not truly. Hate was too heavy to carry. But she could never forget how they had turned their backs on her and her mother, how they had stripped away everything her father had built with his hard work. She carried the wound silently, hidden behind her calm expression. To the world, she looked like just another struggling young woman, balancing jobs and studies. To her family, she was an afterthought, a reminder of a man they had taken advantage of. But deep inside, Rachel held on to something stronger than bitterness: resilience. Her dreams were not built on envy, but on the quiet determination to rise above the cruelty and greed that had tried to bury her. And though no one knew it yet, the girl they mocked as poor and pitiful was preparing herself for the moment life would turn. And when it did, she would be ready. Months later, Rachel learns that her relatives are drowning in debt. The family that once mocked her with their shiny cars and designer clothes now struggled to pay their bills. Their perfect life was slowly collapsing under the weight of unpaid taxes, mismanaged loans, and reckless spending. Rachel heard about it by chance, while delivering food at the diner where she worked. A customer mentioned that the Johnson family was in trouble, that the bank had been sending warnings. At first, Rachel thought it was just gossip, but curiosity led her to check, and soon she discovered the truth. The house, the very same home they had thrown her out of on Christmas night, had been quietly listed for sale. The news hit her like a storm. She sat on the edge of her small bed that night, staring at the printed notice she had found online. Anger rose in her chest, hot and sharp. This was the house her father built, the home filled with her childhood memories. They had taken it away from her and her mother, only to waste it all. But along with anger came temptation, and then hesitation. She wondered what it would mean if she stepped into this. Was she really ready to get involved again with a family who had done nothing but humiliate her? Her heart pulled in 2 directions, one toward justice, the other toward peace. When she told her mother, the older woman looked troubled. "Rachel, don't let bitterness consume you," she said gently. "We've suffered enough. Maybe it's best to let go." Rachel understood her mother's fear, but she also felt a strength building inside her, a quiet determination that surprised even her. "Mom," she whispered, her voice steady, "this is our chance. Dad's house should never have been lost like that. I can't just stand by and watch strangers buy it." That night, she spread her law books across the table and began to dig deeper. She researched property law, mortgage loopholes, and foreclosure auctions. Every page she read, every note she scribbled, felt like a step closer to reclaiming what was once stolen from her family. The process wasn't easy. Banks weren't eager to lend money to a young woman with modest income. Rachel had to prove herself over and over. She pulled together every resource she had. Her savings from long nights at the diner, her small scholarship funds, even borrowing carefully from programs designed to help first-time buyers. She stretched herself thin, but her determination never wavered. Weeks turned into months of effort. Rachel worked through exhaustion, balancing her jobs, her studies, and endless paperwork. Many nights, she stared at rejection letters, her eyes burning with tired tears. But each time, she reminded herself of her father's words. Never let anyone take your dignity, even if they take everything else. Finally, her persistence paid off. She secured a loan. It wasn't easy, and it came with risks, but it was enough. On the morning she signed the final papers, her hands trembled as she held the pen. She was no longer the powerless girl thrown out into the snow. She was now the legal owner of the Johnson family house, her childhood home. Rachel didn't tell anyone. She kept the secret close to her heart, like a flame she wasn't ready to reveal. To her relatives, nothing had changed. They still walked around in their fading pride, clinging to appearances, unaware that the ground beneath their feet no longer belonged to them. When Rachel stepped out of the lawyer's office that day, the winter wind brushed against her face. She looked up at the sky and let out a long breath, her lips curving into the faintest smile. She hadn't bought the house out of spite alone, though part of her wanted them to feel what she had felt. She had done it because it was hers, her father's, her family's. For the first time in years, Rachel felt the weight on her shoulders begin to lift. The very place where she was once humiliated, cast out, and treated as less than nothing, was now in her hands. She walked down the busy street, clutching the papers to her chest, her heart steady with a new kind of strength. The house was hers. And though her relatives didn't know it yet, the day would come when they would have to face the truth. Rachel doesn't reveal her ownership immediately. She keeps the papers hidden in a drawer in her small apartment, knowing that one day she will need them. For now, she chooses silence. Instead of rushing in to announce her victory, she waits. She wants to see what her relatives will do as their perfect world begins to collapse around them. At first, they act as if nothing is wrong. They continue to throw parties, wear expensive clothes, and post pictures online of a life that no longer matches their reality. They still gather in the same family house, the very house Rachel now owns, laughing and pretending everything is fine. To everyone else, they are still the wealthy Johnsons. Rachel watches quietly from a distance. When she does attend family gatherings, she is treated the same as always. Her cousins whisper about her simple clothes. Her aunt makes sharp comments about how hard she works for so little. And her uncle looks at her with the same cold eyes. None of them suspect that the girl they mock is the one holding the deed to the very roof over their heads. "Look at you," one cousin sneered at a dinner. "Still working at that diner? Don't you get tired of smelling like fried food?" The others laughed. Rachel kept her calm smile, though inside her chest burned. If only they knew. If only they understood. But she said nothing, only replying softly, "Work is work. At least it's honest." Her mother, sitting beside her, grew uneasy with every insult. Later that night, as they walked home through the cold, she turned to Rachel. "I don't like this," she said. "You're playing with fire. You bought the house, but you keep going back there to let them mock you. Why? Why let them hurt you again?" Rachel sighed, her breath misting in the night air. "Because, Mom," she said quietly, "they need to understand what it feels like to be powerless. They've never known it. Not the way we have." Her mother looked at her with worried eyes. "Revenge doesn't heal the heart, Rachel." "I'm not looking for revenge," Rachel whispered. I want justice." But deep inside, Rachel wasn't sure if that was the whole truth. The line between justice and vengeance blurred more each day. As the weeks passed, the cracks in her relatives' lives began to show. Bills went unpaid, the cars broke down, and fights erupted over money. Rachel would overhear her aunt snapping at her uncle about wasted business deals. Her cousins argued about who spent too much, who took advantage of whom. The same family that once stood together now tore itself apart. At another family gathering, Rachel watched as her uncle slammed his fist against the table, shouting at his wife, "If you hadn't insisted on that ridiculous trip last summer, we wouldn't be in this mess." Her aunt shot back, "Don't blame me for your bad investments. You were the one who thought buying into that fake company was a good idea." The cousins joined in, voices rising. old resentment spilling out. They accused one another of being greedy, selfish, careless. Rachel sat quietly in the corner, her lips pressed together, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't have to say a word. The cracks were spreading on their own. But inside, her heart twisted. She thought she would feel satisfaction watching them fall apart. Instead, she felt something heavier. These were the same people who had laughed as she was thrown out into the snow. And yet seeing them broken left her uneasy. Was she becoming like them, enjoying the pain of others? Or was this simply the truth they had earned? One evening, her mother found her sitting at the table with the ownership papers spread out before her. Rachel's fingers traced the lines of her father's old signature, her eyes distant. "You can't hold this forever, Rachel," her mother said softly. "Sooner or later, you'll have to decide. Will you use it to destroy them, or will you find another way?" Rachel closed her eyes, torn. She wanted them to feel the sting of humiliation, the same way she had on that Christmas night. She wanted them to understand the coldness of being cast out. But another part of her remembered her father's words. Never let anyone take your dignity, even if they take everything else. Would her dignity survive if she lowered herself to their level? The days turned into weeks, the tension rising like a storm waiting to break. The relatives were drowning in their own pride, refusing to admit how bad things were. They begged banks for extensions, borrowed money from anyone who would listen, and still held their heads high as if they were untouchable. Rachel attended another dinner, this time with her papers folded neatly in her handbag. Her cousins laughed at her again, one of them mocking her shoes, another making a joke about her tiny apartment. Rachel only smiled faintly, her hand brushing the bag at her side. She could end this charade tonight. She could drop the papers on the table, watch their faces turn pale, and reclaim her place once and for all. But she didn't. She sat in silence, letting the insults wash over her, waiting. She wanted the moment to be right, to carry the full weight of truth. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her little room. Should she forgive? Should she show mercy and let the past stay buried? Or should she deliver the same humiliation they had given her, and prove to them that power changes everything? Her heart wrestled with the choice, torn between kindness and justice, forgiveness and vengeance. She didn't know the answer yet, but one thing was certain. The day was coming when her silence would break, and when it did, nothing in the Johnson family would ever be the same again. On the anniversary of her father's death, symbolic timing, Rachel finally makes her move. The morning was gray and heavy, the kind of day when the air itself seemed to remember sorrow. Rachel stood a little distance away from the family house, her childhood home, watching quietly as the sheriff's car pulled up. Her heart pounded, but her face was calm. Today was the day she would no longer be silent. The sheriff walked to the door with a thick envelope in hand. When her aunt opened it, confusion spread across her face. Her uncle came over, snatched the envelope, and quickly tore it open. The words inside made his face pale. "Eviction," her aunt gasped. "This must be a mistake. It's the bank, isn't it?" The cousins gathered behind them, panic in their voices. "What do you mean eviction? What's going on?" Her uncle's hands shook as he read. "We have 48 hours to vacate the property." Who bought it?" Rachel stepped forward then, her boots crunching softly against the gravel. Her presence made everyone turn. They stared at her as if she had appeared out of nowhere. Slowly, calmly she spoke. "It wasn't the bank," she said. Her voice was steady, even gentle, but it carried like a knife through the cold air. "It was me. I own this house now." For a moment, silence blanketed the yard. Then voices erupted all at once. "You?" one cousin shouted. "That's impossible," another cried. Her aunt clutched at her chest as if the words had struck her physically. "Rachel, you can't do this. We're family." Rachel's eyes hardened. She had been waiting for this moment, waiting for them to say that word. "Family. Family?" she repeated slowly, bitterness cutting through her tone. "Family doesn't throw you out on Christmas night. Family doesn't mock you for working hard. Family doesn't take everything you have and laugh while you suffer." Her aunt's face turned red. "We were only trying to." "Don't," Rachel interrupted sharply. "Don't you dare make excuses. You all stood there and watched as I was pushed out of this house with nothing. My mother and I were left to struggle while you lived in luxury. And now you're drowning in your own greed." You did this to yourselves. Her uncle, tall and broad, stepped forward, his voice booming. You think you can come back here and order us around? You're still the same little girl with nothing. Don't forget who you're talking to. Rachel met his glare without flinching. For the first time, she wasn't afraid. I'm talking to a man standing in a house that doesn't belong to him anymore. It belongs to me. The cousins shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. One of them, the same who had once mocked her for her simple shoes, shouted, You're enjoying this, aren't you? You wanted to humiliate us. Rachel's jaw tightened. No, she said firmly. I wanted justice. I wanted you to understand what it feels like to be powerless. For once, you need to face the truth. You are not untouchable. Her aunt's voice broke into a desperate cry. Rachel, please. We can work something out. We can pay you back. Just give us time. Rachel shook her head. Time was what you never gave me. That night, I stood in the snow with nothing but a bag of gifts, and you laughed. You showed me no mercy. Why should I show any now? Her uncle clenched his fists, his face dark with anger, but he said nothing. He knew the papers were real, and he knew Rachel had the law on her side. For all his bluster, he was powerless. Rachel took a step closer, her voice calm but sharp as steel. You have 48 hours to leave this house. After that, the sheriff will return, and you'll be forced out. I suggest you use the time wisely. The yard went quiet again. Her relatives looked at her in shock, disbelief, and fear. The arrogance that once shone so brightly in their eyes had dimmed, replaced by something Rachel had never seen in them before: helplessness. She turned to walk away, her heart heavy but resolute. This was not about revenge anymore. It was about taking back her dignity, her father's legacy. And though part of her ached to see her family like this, another part felt the weight of long years finally lift. Behind her, she heard her aunt's broken voice whisper, We never thought you had it in you. Rachel didn't look back. That's the problem, she said softly. You never thought I was enough, but you were wrong. And with that, she left them standing in the cold, the clock ticking down on their 48 hours. The girl they had once thrown out was now the one holding the power, and this time, they would be the ones cast into the snow. The relatives pack up, humiliated and broken, their pride shattered. The once loud house now echoed with the sound of boxes being dragged across the floor, angry whispers, and muffled sobs. They had no choice but to leave. For years they had laughed at Rachel, but now they were the ones walking out with their heads down. Some of them tried to plead with her. Her aunt clutched Rachel's arm, tears running down her face. Rachel, please, you can't just throw us out like this. We're family. We have nowhere to go. Rachel looked at her calmly, but her voice was firm. Family doesn't throw you out into the snow. Family doesn't mock you when you're struggling. Don't use that word to trap me again. I won't be manipulated. She gently pulled her arm free and walked away, leaving her aunt trembling with shame. Her uncle tried a different approach. If you let us stay, we'll pay you back. We can rebuild. We just need time, he said, his voice low, almost begging. But Rachel shook her head. You had time. You wasted it. This house is no longer yours. You need to leave. One by one, they carried their belongings out. Their expensive clothes, fancy bags, and broken pride could not cover up the truth. They had lost everything. Rachel stood silently as the sheriff oversaw the move. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat. She simply watched, steady and calm. When the last car pulled away, leaving the driveway empty, Rachel stepped inside the house. The silence was heavy, but it was different now. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel poisoned by greed. It felt like it belonged to her again, to her and her father's memory. But Rachel didn't move in. She knew she and her mother could start fresh elsewhere, free of painful memories. Instead, she made a decision that would change the story of the house forever. She used her savings and small loans to renovate it, not into a home for herself, but into a shelter for struggling single mothers. The rooms that once held arrogance and cruelty were now filled with beds, warm blankets, and hope. The kitchen that once served feasts for greedy relatives now served meals for women who had nothing. The living room, once a place of whispered insults and mocking laughter, now echoed with the laughter of children who finally had a safe place to stay. Rachel's mother watched the transformation with tears in her eyes. Your father would be so proud, she whispered one evening as they stood in the newly painted hallway. Rachel smiled softly. This is what he would have wanted. Not revenge, not bitterness, something that gives life, something that helps others. And in that moment, Rachel finally felt at peace. She hadn't won by crushing her relatives, though she had every chance to. She had won by rising above them, by choosing dignity and kindness over hate. The house was no longer a symbol of pain. It was a place of hope, a light for those who needed it most. And Rachel knew in her heart that she had honored her father's legacy in the best way possible. She and her mother no longer felt like victims of cruelty. They had found strength, purpose, and peace, not through revenge, but through building something meaningful. Rachel had taken back her dignity, and with it, she created a future brighter than the past could ever hold. Rachel walks through the now renovated home, her footsteps soft against the polished floors. The air no longer feels heavy with greed or pride. Instead, it is warm, alive with the sound of children laughing and mothers talking softly in the background. The house, once a place of cruelty and humiliation, has become a safe haven filled with hope. She pauses in the living room, looking around at the bright walls and the shelves lined with toys and books. The same room where she was once mocked now carries the voices of joy and new beginnings. For the first time in many years, Rachel feels the weight in her chest finally lift. On the mantel sits an empty space she has been saving. Slowly, she reaches into her bag and pulls out an old photograph of her father. His smile strong and kind, the same smile that gave her strength during the hardest years. With gentle hands, she sets the frame in place. Tears well in her eyes as she looks at it, her lips trembling into a quiet smile. Leaning closer, she whispers, "We're home again, Dad. And this time no one can take it away." The sound of children's laughter rises behind her, filling the house like music. Rachel wipes her tears, her heart calm and steady. She knows the journey was painful, but she also knows she has chosen the better path. Not revenge, but healing. She stands in the center of the room for a moment longer, her face lit by the warm light of the fireplace. Her smile is soft, tearful, but strong, a smile of justice, dignity, and peace. The house is alive again. And so is Rachel. Hi loves. Sparkling heart, thanks so much for staying till the end. Don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. See you next time. Waving hand sparkles.